One of the key themes at the World Economic Forum every year is inclusion, and very often that inclusion is a very large, wide term, but certainly gender inclusion in the economy, in places of work, is absolutely critical. Of course, artificial intelligence is an area of primary concern. There are two key issues that we have a wonderful guest to speak about, Dipali Goenka. Thank you very much for being with us. Let's talk about gender first. As a businesswoman, as an Indian business leader, you have focused a great deal on the inclusion of women in the workspace. Could you explain to us how that has always been a priority for you in Welspun, and you believe, the broader Indian economy needs to reflect that a lot more?
So, first of all, I think the theme here, and I think Vishnu rightly pointed out, and I want to just start from there.
Yeah.
It's about data, design, and empathy. And I think when I come in from the empathy, and I come in from India as an economy, you are talking about the growth towards the 5 trillion GDP. It's not going to happen if the better half of the population is not part of it. Imagine if that 50% is working and the 50% doesn't work. The biggest challenge in our country is literacy.
Yeah.
I believe, and with conviction, that if a woman is working, the child is definitely going to school. And that is where is the elevation of the economy, elevation of a country towards the goal of 5 trillion GDP as well.
In terms of women in decision-making roles, it's critical, obviously, to have women being a key part of the economy in all sectors, right?
Yeah.
But the role of women in decision-making roles, more women like you, for example, deciders, how important is that going forward?
It is going to be an integral part in the terms of the policy framework and the decision making, and believe me, I think the equity, in organizations is going to come in if you have an equal participation of women at the senior levels, but that doesn't come in without the support of the other gender as well.
Yeah.
So I think as corporates we need to take on lot of initiatives to get that going as well. So I feel all of us need to get together to make that happen.
There is also the entire issue of sustainability in technology, and also the entire issue of climate. We can't have economic growth without thinking about the climate, because if it's just not worked for us that way, has it? Again, in your own priorities, where does that stand?
It stands highest in the highest agenda for me. But again, when you talk about sustainability, there has to be an economic benefit as well. And I think that's what needs to be something that we all need to look at. For us at Welspun, 2030, we are going to be water neutral, water positive rather, green energy, and towards a journey towards carbon emissions, scope 3 going to be minimized, zero landfill, working with more than 100,000 farm workers, 1 million impacted by a corporate social responsibility. And I think these are important aspects to what we are going to be doing. But I think this is going to be the way forward for all of us at corporate. When you talk about water neutrality or water positive, that means you're not going to be using fresh water. When you're talking about green energy, you're capping somewhere, the whole inflationary impact of coal and the others as well. So I think there has to be a kind of a trade-off between what you're doing in sustainability and in comparison to the economics of it. I think the key thing as I talk about sustainability, the governance is going to be a very key role that I think all of us need to be cognizant about. Whether it's going to be in the terms of traceability and in the way forward in the terms of the supply chains that we're talking about, which are getting very dynamic and complex as well. So I think that's going to be a very important role, Vishnu.
What about artificial intelligence?
That's going to be a very big one. And I've been hearing a lot of things that, artificial intelligence will render a lot of people, jobless. But I think they're going to coexist together. Imagine if I look at myself and if I look at Welspun Living in totality, imagine that consumer experience and ability to forecast what the consumer will want. I mean, that will enhance my productivity at the shelf space. When you're talking about the supply chain and with the complexity that we are talking about, if the AI can give me a projection about how that whole thing can help me project and maneuver through that complexity, I think that's going to be a big role. Cotton, if I talk about my supply chain and my farmers, where we are already working with AI and partners, AI partners there, the productivity, the seed, the kind of the weather, I think that's going to help me enhance the productivity and yield and the acreage of my cotton as well. So I think it's a whole lot of things that are going to be, complementing vis-a-vis. And also, I think fundamentally, India is about 1.4 billion people. How do we upskill this workforce? And AI is going to be a big deal there. Yeah.
A final question: when one looks at the garment industry, it's often been traditional in India, and it's worked wonderfully for us that it's traditional. But then there's the entire issue of productivity. You were referring to that. Technology versus tradition. Do the two necessarily, or can they necessarily come together in your field?
Absolutely. And I think that's what it's going to get. And that's where the textile productivity is going to be very, very important. When we talk about competing with our neighboring countries and we talk about China, I think that's where India will need to
China,
go.
Vietnam, Bangladesh, right?
Yes, and Sri Lanka as well,
And
or
Sri
Turkey
Lanka.
as well. So I think I think the AI is going to complement and really, substitute a few places where, we can look at productivity as well.
Right. Dipali Goenka, wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much and have a wonderful next couple of days. Well, there you have it, Dipali Goenka speaking to us about the opportunities which exist. He's spoken about 2 or 3 key issues. Number one, the role of gender, the role of being diverse in workplaces, women in roles of leadership. Let us embrace artificial intelligence and let us imbibe technology with traditional forms to ensure that productivity is enhanced greatly.